And even before he did his podcast, like him and Brian Redban, like his godfather that started him in podcasts, like he followed him around and did these like video logs. And Rogan was so candid, like he had like a blog on the internet, just talking about, just same shit he talks about in his podcast now, but just in written form. So I followed this guy, um really, because he was just an interesting guy. I didn't even know he was an actor, but really through his podcast, I found out how interesting. Like he's like a total polymath. You know what I mean? Like he's gifted doing a lot of things. You know what I mean? Like he's a UFC commentator. He's a black belt. He does a podcast, comedian, like all this shit. Like he's just an interesting guy. But just by following him, like he's like very disciplined. So like I never had any discipline in my life. Not from my parents, not from my brothers. It's like he just kind of, by listening to him over the decades, like he just kind of forced it into me. You know, like doing comedy actually requires a lot of discipline. Like people don't realize that. People think just go up and be funny, but no, you actually have to, feel good about yourself, which means you got to exercise, right? You got to eat right. You got to, just be kind of positive in the way you think. Despite how negative like my childhood sounds, like I actually had to kind of portray a lot of optimism. Have high energy when you do comedy. But without Rogan, I don't think I would have found um, the confidence. Just the idea of doing comedy. Like he's completely the guy that planted in my head, and he doesn't even know I exist. So that's the awesome part.
No, that's cool. That's cool to hear. Yeah, I mean, a lot of people I'm sure have similar stories being inspired by this guy. Just like, especially talking about the podcast, obviously how open minded he is, and just like he's willing to basically talk to anyone who's willing to talk to him, who's an interesting person speaking in reasonably good faith. And like, obviously, I think the sign is that actually, like, I don't like all the guests that he has, but like I like a lot of the guests that he has as well. Some of my
Yeah,
favorite, content creators and other comedians. Obviously, it's like, you know, that's
someone, yeah, someone put it this way recently. Like Joe Rogan's podcast is really like five different podcasts. Like I don't listen to every single one of his podcasts either. Like I like UFC, but sometimes he has guests there. They get really deep into historical like fighters, a lot of technicalities. Like that's just not for me. But some people love that. But Rogan, what he does have is like crazy like conspiracy theorists or like scientists. Like those are totally for me. And just even, I mean, he has like certain podcasts that are like self help. Then there's like other ones that are just completely silly with comedians. So it's really like, what I mean? Like he's got like, it's not just like news. His podcast is like everything nowadays. If you think about it, like you learn shit, you get entertained, what I mean. It's like a master class for everything in a way.
he's a great liaison between,
Yeah,
I hate to use this term, but like an expert on whatever topic it is, or some kind of skilled person, whatever it is. So
right.
a professional is probably a better word. That's more broad.
Yeah,
Like he has
he's
some
great
kind.
at introducing you to like a certain topic, and then you can go and dig into that rabbit hole even more yourself.
He also like hasn't. I feel like. I mean, I guess you can be. I get why people might be, not have a positive outlook, like broadly speaking, for the planet, our species, all this stuff. But he's not a cynical person. But even
He's
more
not.
than, it doesn't come across that way. But even more than that, it's like that childhood wonder and curiosity that is just
Yeah,
so evident by how he interacts on his podcast. And I think
yeah,
that's a reason why people like me and you are drawn to that, and have some similar tastes, and as we talked about, in comedy and even in cartoons specifically.
exactly. I mean, let's be honest. If there wasn't for Rogan, you and I wouldn't even be here trying to make a podcast of our own. Like
No, probably not.
yeah. I mean, Rogan, he's a godfather. He likes to call Howard Stern or whoever, like whoever. came up with podcasting first. But I'm sorry, Rogan, he's gonna die with that fucking etch on his grave. Okay, he's the fucking pod master.
Yeah, no, I mean, I get crediting Stern with a lot of the, especially audio, radio, like format ideas and stuff. And I'm sure he was inspired by, things that came before him. But Joe Rogan is certainly more relevant, I think, in
Yeah,
2024, and been more relevant than Howard Stern for quite some time, I could argue. And this is coming from someone who really, really grew up and was a big fan, and still is a big fan of the best things about Howard Stern, and which is why I've never like been like, oh, cancel Howard Stern, because like it's not what I want to do. I'm not like, if I don't like something, I don't want to like ruin someone, or like let them let hatred for them or my dislike for them consume me. I
yeah.
can still
Just stop listening. You can just tune out. You don't have to
right.
listen to
I
them.
can not, but I don't even have to do that. I can go back and I can watch the Howard Stern greatest hits. I still watch his interview with Eminem in like 1999 or whatever. Some of the
Oh, when he used
funniest
to have like Playboy
conversation.
models come on, like
Again, that speaks to like perhaps even more, like, I'm going to use this word in this context, diversity of content and guests that Howard Stern had. That like it really was a kind of everything show where you're going to talk about news and current events and guests and Hollywood, and even he openly was not a fan of sports and didn't really know anything about sports, but if there was a big topic, the Yankees are winning, like, and he did have a fair amount of athletes on, and that was interesting to get their different
I think that's what turns me
perspectives.
on. I think that's what turns me on to Rogan's is because it's not about sports. Or I mean, if it is about like specific athletes, they're not just always talking about sports.
Yeah, they're
And
mostly
again, like
not. Their journey. They're talking about their kind of like
yeah,
professional journeys, personal journeys.